You know, I have watched humanity for many years now, and I have noticed something peculiar. The ones who possess the deepest understanding, those souls who have wandered furthest into the territories of wisdom, they tend to grow quieter as they grow wiser. Have you noticed this? The young philosopher argues endlessly, thrusting his ideas forward like a sword, eager to prove, to convince, to win. But the elder, the one who is truly seen, he sits back and listens. He nods, he smiles, and when provoked, when someone demands he defend his position, he often chooses silence. Now the world calls this many things: weakness, avoidance, pride. But I want to suggest to you today that this silence is not what it appears to be. This silence is not empty. It is full of a knowing that cannot be translated into the language of argument, full of a wisdom that understands something the arguers have not yet grasped, that truth does not need defending. Let me ask you something. Have you ever tried to describe the color blue to someone who has been blind since birth? You could use all the words in your language. You could say it is like the sky, like the ocean, like sadness made visible. You could craft beautiful metaphors and elaborate explanations, and yet, at the end of all your effort, they still would not see blue. Because blue is not something that can be argued into existence. It must be experienced. This is what the wise soul understands. Most of what is true about existence, most of what matters, cannot be captured in the net of words. And argument, my friend, argument is all words. It is the attempt to force reality into the narrow corridors of language, to make the infinite fit inside the finite. And so the wise remain silent, not because they have nothing to say, but because they understand the futility of trying to say it. Think about this for a moment. When you argue, what are you really doing? You're trying to take the truth as you have experienced it, the living, breathing, felt truth of your existence, and compress it into statements, into premises and conclusions, into logical structures that can be examined and debated. But life is not a logical structure. Consciousness is not a syllogism. The deepest truths you have ever known, did they come to you through argument? Or did they arrive in moments of silence, in flashes of recognition, in experiences so profound that when they ended you found yourself speechless? I have never met anyone who was argued into enlightenment. I have never seen a soul awakened by winning a debate, and yet we live in a world obsessed with argument, with discussion, with the endless back and forth of positions and counterpositions. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone must share it. Everyone believes that if they can just find the right words, the right logic, the right evidence, they can make others see what they see. And so they argue. They argue about politics, about religion, about the meaning of life, about what is real and what is illusion. They argue until they are exhausted, until relationships crumble, until the joy drains from their faces. And what changes? Nothing. Or worse than nothing, because argument does not bring people closer to truth, it entrenches them more deeply in their positions. Every counter-argument strengthens the walls they have built around their beliefs. Every attack makes them more defensive. Every attempt to prove them wrong makes them more certain they are right. This is the paradox the wise soul understands. The more you try to change someone's mind through argument, the more you ensure their mind will not change. Now I can hear some of you thinking, but Aristotle, surely there is value in discourse and dialogue and the exchange of ideas. And yes, there is, but notice the difference. Dialogue is not the same as argument. Dialogue is two people exploring truth together, both willing to be changed, both open to discovering something neither knew before. Argument is two people defending positions, both committed to being right, both treating truth as a territory to be conquered rather than a reality to be discovered. In dialogue, there is curiosity. In argument, there is only certainty. And certainty, my friend, certainty is the death of wisdom. The wise soul knows this. And so when confronted with someone who wants to argue, who needs to be right, who demands that truth conform to their understanding, the wise soul steps back, not out of fear, not out of inability to engage, but out of a profound recognition that this is not the right soil for truth to take root. You cannot plant a seed in stone. And a mind closed by certainty is stone, hard, impenetrable, resistant to anything that might crack its surface. The wise soul does not waste seeds on stone. He waits. He watches. And when he encounters soil, when he meets someone genuinely open, genuinely curious, genuinely willing to not know, then he speaks, softly, carefully, offering his truth not as a weapon but as a gift. And then he falls silent again, allowing that person the space to discover what is true for themselves. There is something else the wise understand about silence. Something deeper still. They understand that most arguments are not really about truth at all. They are about ego, about the need to be seen as intelligent, as right, as superior. Think about the last argument you witnessed, or perhaps participated in. Was it really about discovering what is true, or was it about winning? About proving that your perspective is correct and the other person's is mistaken? Be honest with yourself, because the ego loves to dress itself up in the robes of truth-seeking. But beneath those robes it is simply seeking validation, recognition, the sweet taste of being right. The wise soul has tasted that sweetness many times, and has discovered something surprising. It is not nourishing. It fills the mouth for a moment, but leaves the soul hungry. Because being right does not bring peace, it does not bring understanding, and it does not bring you closer to the truth of existence. It only brings you the temporary pleasure of superiority. And that pleasure is always followed by the hunger for more. More arguments to win. More people to convince, more opportunities to prove yourself. It is an addiction, this need to be right, and the wise soul has broken free of it. When you are no longer addicted to being right, something remarkable happens. You discover that you have no need to argue. Someone says something you know to be false, something that contradicts your deepest understanding. And you feel no compulsion to correct them. They present an interpretation of reality that seems to you utterly mistaken, and you simply nod and let it pass. Not because you agree and not because you think all perspectives are equally valid, but because you understand that their wrongness does not diminish your rightness. Their confusion does not erase your clarity, and their illusion does not threaten your truth. You can let them be exactly as they are, believing exactly what they believe, and it costs you nothing. This is freedom. This is what silence offers. Let me tell you a story. Once I encountered a man who was absolutely convinced that suffering was meaningless, that it served no purpose, that it was simply something to be avoided at all costs. He had constructed an elaborate philosophy around this belief, complete with arguments and evidence and logical proofs. He was quite proud of it, and he wanted to debate me, to test his ideas against mine. He wanted me to engage, to argue, and to show him where he was wrong so he could defend his position and emerge victorious. But I did not argue. I listened. I listened as he presented his case, his face growing more animated, his voice rising with passion. And when he finished, when he looked at me expectantly, waiting for my counter-argument, I simply said, "You may be right." His face fell. He was confused. "But don't you disagree?" he asked. "Don't you believe suffering has meaning?" And I smiled and said, "What I believe is not relevant to your experience. If you have found suffering to be meaningless, then for you in this moment it is meaningless. When you discover otherwise, you will know." He was disappointed. He wanted the argument. He wanted the clash of ideas, but I gave him silence instead. And years later, after life had taken him through fires I could have told him about, but which he needed to walk through himself, he came back to me. And he said, "I understand now why you didn't argue with me. I wouldn't have heard you. I couldn't have heard you, and I needed to discover it myself. This is what the wise soul knows. You cannot give people your realizations. They must have their own. And here is another truth about arguments. They happen in the realm of concepts, of abstractions, of ideas. But reality is not conceptual. Reality is experiential. You can argue all day about whether a fire is hot, but until you put your hand near the flame, you do not truly know heat. You can debate the nature of love, construct elaborate theories about it, analyze it from every angle. But until you have felt your heart break open in the presence of another, until you have experienced that simultaneous terror and ecstasy of genuine connection, you do not know love. You only know ideas about love. The wise soul has learned to distinguish between the map and the territory. Arguments happen on the map. Life happens in the territory. And no amount of map reading will substitute for the journey itself. This is why silence is often the wisest response. Because when someone argues with you about something they have not experienced, what are you arguing with? Not their wisdom, not their understanding, only their concepts, their ideas, their theories. And concepts change only through experience, not through argument. You could present the most brilliant, logically airtight argument for the existence of something profound, something transcendent, something beyond the ordinary boundaries of consciousness. And if the person you are speaking to has never touched that reality themselves, your argument will do nothing.